Why you lie and you cheat and you try to make a fool out of shit.
What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again once again, and today, people, today we're talking about... I know. Could you tell from the thumbnail, the title, maybe the intro that I put together in 3 minutes? But really, is Marathon the next big thing, rivaling games like Fortnite and Apex Legends? Will this revolutionize gaming like Bungie's other games, Halo and Destiny?
You serious?
Or is this just another corporate cash out? A piece of pointless, soulless consumerism. Art! Devoid of art. Another in a long line of
We can't even speak.
Yes, I can!
Another in a long line of minimally viable products to beta test, undercooked and chock full of microtransactions, begging for your money before the developers have even had the courtesy of releasing a feature-rich product. All sold at a premium price. Shat out by the ever-bloated and growing more and more repugnant by the day AAA gaming industry, where the corpses of your once-beloved studios or favorite franchises are hollowed out and puppeted around, sent to die on the altar of corporate greed. Will Marathon be an IGN 7 out of 10 and a game journalist's return to form? Will it lead to Bungie suffering even more catastrophic layoffs? Well, Bungie has revealed their next big game in a franchise long dead, alive again, grafted to machines their builders do not understand. The press has gotten to play it, so let's go ahead and shift through all the noise and see what there is to see. So, because every video is somebody's first, what exactly is Marathon? Marathon, for the sake of simplicity, is a hero/character-based extraction shooter. On release, Marathon will have 6 runners, heroes, characters, whatever you want to call them. These runners will have special abilities intrinsic to them, like camo, speed boost, being able to see the rarity of items at a distance, a riot shield. Bungie and other creators who have played Marathon, like SkillUp, have stated that these abilities, unlike in Destiny, do not define the hero. They're just something that spices them up. SkillUp would add in his video that at the start, the heroes are so overly tuned that they borderline on being boring.
I do think these runner kits are really basic to the point where I'm like, come on Bungie, what else you got? This is the studio that designed the Strand and Stasis subclasses, and here the kits are like, ping nearby enemies once every 30 seconds, or pull up a shield that can block a little bit of damage, or go invisible for a few seconds. Honestly, I'm just gonna say it, these kits are tactical and balanced, but they're really boring and generic, and I think Bungie can do way better than this.
Whether or not if this is how things are at endgame remains to be seen, but right now, all we can do is make assumptions based off of what we have. And one would assume that developers previewing a game to a mass media audience, for that mass media audience to disseminate details of to the general population, would want the game being demonstrated at its best. Once you've decided what hero, character, and or runner you want to be, you load in the map. Grab everything that isn't nailed down, like the magpie hyped up on cocaine you are, and extract. However, there are other players who are also trying to nab every bauble and trinket that isn't nailed down, and even some that are. But more importantly, this is where the PvP comes into play, because not only are they trying to grab as much shiny shit as they can, like some unfettered loot goblin, they're also trying to nab the shiny shit that you grabbed. So, they'll try to kill you. You have to kill them back, or you die, and you lose all your stuff.
Worst case scenario, you die. But who knows? Maybe you won't.
Maybe you take their loot. Great for you, but don't get too attached to anything, because whether it be the next game or the next season, your vault's gone. Anything you ferreted away goes off into the ether.
Oh, everything is gone. Your stuff, my stuff, most importantly, my stuff.
So now that we know what Marathon is, or at least we're all kind of sort of on the same page, let's rewind a bit. Let's talk about Bungie's preview. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, maybe you've been on the internet, maybe you made the mistake of going on to Twitter, but there's a lot of negative sentiment surrounding Marathon. The showcase, in my opinion, did Marathon more harm than good. It was a nervous mess that did little to sell Marathon. In fact, my stream devolved into talking about Monster Hunter. It is what it is. Now, to be clear, that doesn't necessarily mean that Marathon is bad. That just means Bungie did a bad job of showing it. Nuance, I know, right? Gasp, shock, horror, lightning crackle, lightning crackle, lightning crackle, revelation! I shouldn't have to watch half a dozen YouTube videos by YouTubers who were there and sat down and played the game and who decided to explain what Marathon is and how it all works to know what's in the box, to understand what's in the box. What's in the box?
What's in the box?
This is what the Bungie live stream should have been for. Mayhaps they're too accustomed to Destiny, where everybody tuning in knows what they're talking about, or they've already bought in. But this is a new game in a long-established, kinda dead franchise. And yet, Bungie seemed to be more preoccupied with showing off their overindulgent, avant-garde, I wish I was Kojima making the love child of Cyberpunk 2077 in space, meets Death Stranding, after going to a Meow Wolf art installation, meets Uncanny Valley, meets Eurotrash, grunge, punk, bubblegum goth short film. There's probably like 5 people who understood all of those words in that order, and no, none of that's in the Bible. I mean, it was cool, don't get me wrong, but it's not what I go to a gameplay reveal to see. I go to a gameplay reveal to, I don't know the ins and outs of the game that I'm being asked to buy. Also, my pattern recognition senses are tingling.
I met a traveler from an antique land who said,
It knows you.
Sure, it's nothing. Yeah, totally nothing. Also, was that the Osmondius poem?
My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
The poem about the ravages of time and the end of empires. Would that be situational irony or dramatic irony? The through line here is, of course, Bungie and their legacy. If I was Bungie, I probably wouldn't court that particular albatross, and I'd definitely be knocking on some wood. But as I am oft wont to do, I digress. So, the reveal. All things being fair, had this been the first reveal a year or so ago, I think sentiment surrounding the reveal would be much different. Because back then, you could make the argument, well, you know, they have a year or two to go in development. Bungie has time. Right now, however, they're 5 months from release. Let me go ahead and repeat that for the people in the cheap seats. Bungie is 5 months from releasing Marathon, which technically speaking means they're more like 3 to 4 months away from the final 1.0 build being compiled and going off to gold certification, while the development on the 1.x patches starts or continues. So this reveal was, for all intents and purposes, go time. It was time to put their cards on the table. It was time to nut up or shut up. But after watching the Luke Stevens video on Marathon, I'm not necessarily sure Bungie even understands they're 5 months away from release, which sounds psychotic when I say it as an outsider looking in, but here's what Luke had to say.
They're 5 months out, and one of the 2 revolutionary things that they're talking about hasn't been built yet. I'm starting to get the feeling, and this was paired with some of the other stuff that I heard, where they kept saying, like, we're still early, so please provide us your feedback so that we can make improvements and tweak it. They're 5 months out. They're really not that early. And this game has been in production for 6 years. 6.
So, let me make sure I get this straight. Let me make sure I understand what's going on here. Bungie is 5 months from release. They have spent the last year talking about how Marathon is going to be this revolutionary game, how it is going to redefine the genre. And yet, somehow, someway, through some Herculean leap in logic that us mere mortals will never be able to comprehend, the mode that all of this promise was built on is little more than a handful of ideas and a pipe dream with no bearing in reality. Because fuck, of course it is. Oh, and if that wasn't already working against Marathon, the other thing that's supposed to put Marathon on the map, the mystical, magical 4th map, is not only still in development, which, okay, you know, fine, fair enough, they still have 5 months, but it doesn't release with the game. And yet, apparently, this will revolutionize everything. Nobody knows if this will actually happen, but Bungie says, trust us, bro, so, of course, we have to trust them, bro.
Sheer fucking hubris.
So, according to Luke, the 2 things that are supposed to make Marathon this super special awesome game either don't exist or exist in a case of, trust me, bro, give us your money and we'll get it, we'll get around to wowing you eventually. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair indeed. Oh yeah, and lest I forget, according to SkillUp, they're 5 months out and the narrative hasn't been written. They have framework, they have lore, but the overarching narrative doesn't exist.
Story is another big gap right now. Bungie were very upfront about the fact that they've built the narrative framework for Marathon. They haven't written the actual narrative yet.
Look, I wasn't sitting around here expecting a huge, expansive story from a PvP game that's wearing the skin suit of a long-abandoned franchise. But we're 5 months out. From what I understand, this game has been in some form of development for around 4 years, 6 if you count consultation. Why are they waiting till the 11th hour?
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
I guess, technically speaking, you can't reboot the narrative in the 11th hour if you don't have one. Who knows? Maybe this was the reboot. But it's not the only issue with the narrative. I'll let Hidden Xperia explain.
I did ask quite a few times if there were going to be some like OG Marathon terminals in-game, in maps for you to find in a raid, and the answer that I always got, and I asked this numerous times, I got the same answer every time, and it was like, well, how would you feel about finding the terminals in-game, but actually reading them out of game? So I think the idea is that you find the terminal contents in-game, and then you read them out of game so you're not obstructed.
Time is a straight line drawn on a sphere. And yet, somehow, it manages to get worse. Because that's possible. Marathon is unashamed of how much of a minimally viable product it is. For those of you who do not know, a minimum viable product, MVP, is the version of a product with just enough features to be usable by early customers who can provide feedback for future development. This is created to satisfy early adopters and validate product ideas. Bungie has stated, and I quote, "We want to build this game with our community." As somebody who spent the better part of 10 years experiencing exactly just what Bungie means when it comes to those words, "We want to build the game with our community," those words do not inspire anything that resembles confidence. I'm just going to be real. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be real honest here for a moment. It took 10 years, or the better part of 10 years, to get an LFG in a game that's advertised as an MMO. That's pretty basic. It took 10 years to get the option to recreate your character in an MMO. It took 6 to 7 years to get a transmog system in a loot-based MMO. And I know, but Joker, Destiny's not an MMO. Well, if Bungie wants to advertise Destiny as an MMO, I'm going to hold them to the standards that they set. Marathon is a game that has had 6 years of development, 2 of that pre-production and consultation, 4 of it active development. This is a game that, because it's a AAA title, it's had hundreds of millions of dollars invested into it. Billions of dollars if you look at it from the Sony angle. This is a game that is 5 months from release. Again, realistically 3 to 4 months from release, but details. To say that this reveal was go time seems like an understatement. Many games have significantly less money, significantly less developers, and don't have the ear of one of the biggest multimedia publishers on the face of the planet. The reveal of Marathon, which has led to the mixed reception, honestly boggles the mind. And I can't blame anyone for being disappointed. There's a very real sentiment within the Destiny community that boils down to players feeling like they, in good faith, supported Bungie and Bungie took advantage of them. Now, of course, you and I were all cynical and we're like, no shit, Sherlock, did you figure that out on your own or did your mommy help you? They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. In fact, this channel has been warning you about them taking advantage of you for years and how you need to push back against that. Because if you don't push back against that, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. It's what corporations do. Duh! But the Destiny community, or at least aspects of the Destiny community, I don't want to generalize, are looking at Marathon. And they're like, really? This is it? This is what Destiny has been diminished for? A clear-cut case of a minimally viable product? A glorified beta being released at a premium price? No wonder Bungie shifted its demographic away from Destiny players on this one. Destiny players have already been sold a minimally viable product twice. 3 times would just be ridiculous. And what gets me is Bungie has the audacity to try to spin this like a good thing. We want to build the game with our community. How about, and I know this is a novel concept, you just try building a complete product. Outside looking in, being cynical, knowing corporations are going to corporate, to me, this just looks like Bungie is doing what they have to do contractually, getting a product out the door so the higher up can get out with their golden parachute. Because there's no way that this game, at least what's shown, is ready. It needs another year in my opinion. And that's what's frustrating. Because I'm going to be real, I'm going to be honest, this game's right up my alley. I'm not hating on it because I'm negative and hate all things that are joyful. No. I want this game to succeed. And yet it's being pushed out the door and it doesn't sound like it's going to have enough time to be ready. Melancholia, anger, jealousy, disappointment, which I'm sure will be shouted down by the positivity police, was quickly replaced, however, by confusion. What do I mean? Well, a narrative that you'll hear from staunch marathon defenders goes something like this. This game isn't for you.
The bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Yeah, just a little bit of a sneaking suspicion here, but I don't think Bungie can afford for this game not to be for you, for everybody, for as many people as will play it. Put a pin in the idea that this game is not for you, because it'll be an idea that we keep coming back to over and over and over again for the course of this video. But if that's the case, who exactly is this game for? People already playing more robust, entrenched, feature-complete extraction shooters with their own communities, games they've already paid into monetarily and time-wise? Ah yes, we're gonna take all them Tarkov players and bring them over to Marathon. Is it for people who just like PvP games? People who can choose from any number of high-profile, already established, large community, feature-complete, free-to-play games that dominate the market? Is this for a handful of content creators and streamers who are in between games, who started with Destiny, but as Destiny's popularity and quality waxed and waned because of Marathon's development, and, you know, the half a dozen other games as a service games or whatever Bungie was developing, these streamers and content creators found themselves in need of a new game. They found themselves trying to re-establish their brands in other titles, but were often too little, too late, or outclassed by the competition. If not for the people who played Bungie games and enjoyed Marathon in the 90s, then who is this for? Why even call it Marathon if it's not for people who like Marathon? So again, who is Marathon for? This confusion stems from and is further compounded by both what was and wasn't shown at the reveal. As I said earlier, content creators have done a much better job of telling us what's actually in the box than Bungie. The confusion around Marathon, in my opinion, seems to stem from a lack of identity. Oh, don't get me wrong, Marathon certainly has a style, a visual language, but where's the substance? Style is just fluff. Where's all the crunch? And I may just be speaking for myself here, though I don't think I am, given the discourse around Marathon on the internet. I haven't seen anything displayed that deserves my curiosity, let alone my attention. So what exactly is the hook? Nebulous Bungie gameplay that people can just get in Destiny or other Halo games? The days of Bungie being the only first-person shooter that feels good to play on controller because the absurd amount of bullet magnetism and aim assist is a bygone era. Most, if not all, modern first-person shooters feel good to play. So what's the secret sauce here? Is it because the game's slow, so the boomer shooter generation in their 30s have a chance of enjoying it? Is this game rated O for old, 30 plus only? Is that why everything is saturated in whites and neon greens? Because, well, older people, their eyes don't work too good no more, and so we need some simple roadblock color shape things going on so everybody can just see what's going on. Let me come at this from another direction. What makes Marathon special? What makes Marathon worth my money? Because it will be entering at a premium price into an arena full of other PvP options that are free to play. So what makes this game super special awesome that I'm willing to pay a premium price tag? More importantly, what makes this game worth my time? After watching the teasers, what screams to you, you can only get this experience in Marathon? Oh sure, the world building is great, and that would mean something if Marathon was a level-based or sandbox-based PvE game. You know, like the original Marathon games. But that's not the case. So all that world building and atmosphere doesn't really matter in a competitive PvP game. So what exactly is Marathon's hook? I'll use another example. Titanfall 2. You watch the teaser for Titanfall 2, and you cry because we're not getting a Titanfall 3. Editing Joker here. Apparently Titanfall 3 was a thing that was in development and has now been cancelled. I want to personally apologize for manifesting this evil by making jokes. I mean, you watch the teaser for Titanfall 2, and you instantly know everything you need to know about that game. You have the runny, jumpy, climby shenanigans that defines the pilot experience, but then you also have the slow, lumbering Titans that all have their own unique kits. It's easy for people to look at Titanfall 2's trailer and get a clear and concise idea solidified in their mind about what the game is about, what makes Titanfall special, why you should play it. Another example, Monster Hunter. You see that? I'm going to turn it into pants.
It's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience. Oh, really?
What about Marathon is iconic or sexy? And no, I don't mean sexy in that Emma Frost, Death by Snoo Snoo kind of way. I mean sexy as in, bro, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Is it that it's an extraction shooter? Well, there's loads of extraction shooters, and we talked about this earlier. They already have established communities who don't have to worry about those communities suddenly dying a week after release. The game doesn't make all the money in the world. See Sony's $400 million disaster piece, Concord. And this isn't a game that Sony can afford to fail because they spent 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, depending on what source you go by, billion with a B, dollary dues on Bungie. And the entire premise for their purchase of Bungie was that Destiny was one of the only successful games as a service game on the market. Well, now they're gonna look really fucking stupid if they try to launch another one and it doesn't quite take off. What does that mean for all of Sony's other games that Bungie has advised on? Oh yeah, and I should note that Bungie would have advised on Concord and still gave that shit the green light. Again, I'm not sitting here saying that Marathon's going to be the next Concord. What I am saying though is if Bungie advised on Concord and they gave it the green light, they said, okay, this is good to go. Somebody's judgment at some point, somewhere, somehow, some when, some why was impaired. And that is something people should take into consideration. Even though Bungie didn't make Concord, they helped advise on it. It is what it is. But I digress. The point is, as far as I can tell, there is no je ne sais quoi, or however that's pronounced, when it comes to Marathon. That doesn't mean there won't be any, it just means that it's not readily apparent, or that Bungie focused on demonstrating the wrong things, like bragging about how they sanded down all the edges and friction when it comes to the core of extraction shooters. However, that's not necessarily a good thing. That's why people play these games. That said, it's not necessarily a bad thing either. Look at Apex Legends. I know we keep talking about the Titanfall franchise, but Apex Legends took everything that was unique, interesting, and fun about Titanfall, removed it from the game, dumbing it down, and it made literally all the money. It made so much money that it killed Titanfall 3.
Walk out the door, you see someone that you know, and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
So what exactly is the point of Marathon? And I don't mean that in some nihilistic, what is the point of anything kind of way. Or even the, we're playing a PvP game, so there is no point. I mean, what exactly is the hook? Having scoured easily half a dozen hours of Marathon gameplay, interviews, and reactions, I couldn't tell you what the hook is, and I don't think the people who played it could either. And again, that doesn't mean there isn't one, that just means it's not readily apparent, or it may take time to find. But that's kind of a problem. And hey, don't take my word for it. Some people may accuse me of being a hater. So here's Jason Jones.
We are the most cynical people. Like, we are the jaded crowd who, if a game doesn't entertain us in 5 minutes, we stop playing it.
What is Marathon's 30 seconds of fun? For those of you who do not know what I mean by that, here's a pretty good explanation by Jamie Gersimer.
In Halo 1, there was maybe 30 seconds of fun that happened over and over and over and over again. So if you can get 30 seconds of fun, you can pretty much stretch that out to be an entire game. Encountering a bunch of guys, melee attacking one of them before they were aware, throwing a grenade into a group of other guys, and then cleaning up the stragglers before they could surround you. And so you can have all the great graphics and all the different characters and lots of different weapons with amazing effects, but if you don't nail that 30 seconds, you're not going to have a great game.
This idea of 30 seconds of fun would also be integral to Halo's PvP. In fact, I would argue that it was almost more focused in PvP because you have a bunch of players who are all trying to have their 30 seconds of fun smashed together. So what's Marathon's 30 seconds of fun? Because I have seen Scar09, I believe that's his name's 15-20 minute breakdown of Marathon gameplay, and there's a lot of dead space where nothing's going on. After watching Scar09's breakdown, frankly, I was left bored with a caveat. And it's an important caveat. Having played some of these PvP, PvE games, there's definitely a difference between watching someone play it and playing it yourself. The game that instantly comes to mind, for me at least, is Sea of Thieves. I know people will be like, but what about Tarkov? What about Hut Shadow? Hold on, let me go with Sea of Thieves because I think it's a very good example of the overall point that I'm trying to make. So a couple of years ago, before my buddy Faison decided to opt out of life and shed his mortal coil, we used to play a lot of Sea of Thieves together. For us, the main main draw wasn't the PvE or the pirate ships or the quest. No. For us, the main draw was at some point, somewhere, somehow, somewhen, we were going to ruin somebody's night. We were going to sink their ship, take their shit, and give it to Mr. Reaper. Now I have to imagine laying in wait, sailing around, going from point to point, looking for people, probably wouldn't be the most engaging gameplay to watch. On that same note, I can't imagine it'd be the most engaging gameplay to participate in if you're a solo. With all that said, the gimmick of Sea of Thieves is readily apparent. The fantasy of working as a crew on a pirate ship to get treasure and sink other people's pirate ships. It's simple, it's elegant, it's like the edge of a knife.
All of this just works.
So again, what is Marathon's special sauce? Because as far as I can tell, Marathon has just taken the most tedious aspects of Destiny, patrols, bounties, public events, and added PvP to them. And it did this while removing the one aspect of Destiny that makes all of this bearable: your created character and the loot you accumulate, being special and unique and interesting. Now, don't get me wrong, Marathon does have loot. It is an extraction shooter, and that is what you're extracting with, loot. However, don't get attached to any of it because you lose it at the end of the season or you lose it next match. So loot doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't, but it does, but it doesn't, but it does. It matters in a different way. Loot in Marathon is very disposable. Now, I actually agree with the choice to reset characters at the end of the season, simply because it keeps the game balanced. It allows new players to enter at the beginning of the next season without being horrifically undergeared. It allows Bungie to do things like with the seasonal artifact that we see in Destiny, where they can have crazy perks for a little while, and then at the end of the season, it gets wiped. It also allows Bungie to tackle any problem children at the end of the season, just remove it from the game, and bada bing, bada boom, you don't have to deal with it next season. So yeah, it's a choice that I fundamentally do agree with, but it also cheapens loot and opens up the opportunity for Bungie to be maybe a little lazy when it comes to designing new and interesting weapons and gear to use, because they can just keep recycling the same loot over and over and over and over and over again. But Bungie would never do that. Never. Bungie, not even once. That'd be silly. Preposterous even. However, I will add another caveat to this gameplay looking rather boring. There is a fundamental difference between the way a game is played when it first releases or when you're first learning a game, and the way the game plays 6 months in. Once the meta has become a solved problem, or people learn the controls, the maps better, or when people start understanding which activities are worth doing and which ones are not worth doing. Which, unfortunately, brings us to two more issues with Marathon: Bungie's Trust Us Bro activity and proximity chat. So according to Bungie, the Marathon ship map will have raid-like puzzles. What exactly does that mean? No, I mean, like, step back, let's quantify this, let's think about it rationally. What exactly does raid-like puzzles mean? Because I think they're using the term raid-like puzzles as somewhat of a misnomer. I think they're being kind of disingenuous, because 6 people standing on a plate to open a door is technically speaking a raid-like puzzle. Does Gambit have raid-like mechanics? Because technically speaking, you dunk moats in a raid? No, of course not. And yet, technically speaking, you can argue that Gambit does in fact have raid-like mechanics, but nobody would consider dunking moats or standing on plates actual raid-like mechanics. But let's go ahead and disassemble this even further. Bungie says that this map has raid-like mechanics, and yet our fire team is only 3 people, not 6. So these puzzles can only be so difficult. And I don't even know if these puzzles can be dungeon level difficult, which dungeons can be soloed, but these puzzles have to be able to be completed by 3 perfect strangers who are just dropped into a match together. And clearly Bungie still believes that dungeon and raid puzzles are too difficult for the average players to figure out if they're match made together, because dungeons and raids don't have matchmaking in Destiny. And hey, after doing a bunch of LFGs for years, I'm not necessarily going to say that Bungie's wrong on that accord. So these raid-like puzzles have to be able to be completed by a team of 3 who may or may not be able to communicate, who are just match made together, and everybody knows where these puzzles are going to be. So it's going to be in the middle of a live fire exercise that they're trying to complete these puzzles. So again, how difficult can they be? How in-depth can they be? And the intricacy of the puzzles also runs headlong into the nature of an extraction shooter. If the puzzle is too difficult, then you run the risk of nobody bothering doing it. If it's not that difficult, then anyone can do it. However, what's more likely to happen, more so if the puzzle is a middle of the road difficulty, is people are just going to camp it and wait for somebody else to do it. Why would you bother wasting time, energy, and resources to do a puzzle when you can just kill somebody who's doing it and take the rewards. And I don't think people have a really high tolerance for that level of bullshit, irregardless of the rewards. So these puzzles will just go undone. And I'm not just pulling this hypothetical out of my ass. This happens in Destiny all the time. People will optimize the fun out of the game. The greatest example of this, I think, was Destiny 1 Year 1 with Loot Cave. Oh yeah, sure, Vault of Glass and doing Nightfalls, those were the ways to get the best loot in the game. You know what was easier? Putting a rubber band around your controller, pointing into a cave, and going and doing something else. In fact, Destiny has a long storied history of AFK farms for this precise reason. There is, of course, ways that Bungie can circumvent these issues. But at that point, why are you making an extraction shooter? Why aren't you making a co-op PvE game? Now, it's probably easy to watch this video and think that I'm poo-pooing on Marathon, that I'm being a Debbie Downer. I'm not. There's just realities that we have to address. Marathon failing is bad for everyone, and I think Sony or Bungie are trying to rush the game to the market to beat Grand Theft Auto, or to at least not be in the wake of Grand Theft Auto. And delaying Marathon 6 months to a year puts Bungie in competition with Destiny. Editing Joker here. So over the course of trying to get this video out the proverbial door, a handful of things have happened. Borderlands 4 moved up its release date, and GTA moved its release date from 2025 to May of 2026. Guess they really want that Game of the Year accolade. I kid. But now I also wouldn't be shocked if the price of GTA was on the higher end of what people predicted, as just a matter of course, because people are growing more and more accustomed to paying more. But I digress. This change means I've decided to cut out any conversation regarding Marathon going head-to-head with Borderlands 4, which was originally a concern. A concern clearly no longer on the table. But I did choose to keep the conversation around GTA mostly intact because, well, it really doesn't matter that the release date of GTA was pushed back in the conversation of publishers trying to avoid clashing with GTA. Because at the time, just as I was working with, the publishers were working with the assumption that GTA would come out when it was announced, sometime in 2025. This brings us to the elephant in the room, the most logical question. Given that Bungie more or less now has 9 months of breathing room between their original announce date and GTA's release, do they take a year? Meaning, in the 5 months between now and Marathon's release, do they announce that they're going to take another 6 months to let the game cook? This choice very likely could put them head-to-head with themselves, with Destiny, if Project Behemoth releases in the winter window, as we've seen Destiny content release since the days of Dark Below all the way to Lightfall. That said, you'll remember the reason Destiny content started releasing in February was because they kept delaying it out of September and November. Now, Bungie could release Project Behemoth in December or November and Marathon in February. That might be enough breathing room for Destiny, depending on how the new sustained content model for DLC works. However, given the fall off of what we've seen in recent years for seasons or episodes, any damage that Marathon could theoretically do by stepping on Destiny's toes during a season or an episode, if those are even still a thing, is honestly, if I had to guess, probably pretty negligible. And this has nothing to do with cross-pollination, it has everything to do with players just falling off during seasons and episodes. It is what it is. More so after the first week of release, if that audience isn't captured. That's just statistically and historically, there's probably a chart on the screen right now, what we've seen. So, you know, it is exactly what it is because here's the data that says it is what it is. Now, in my mind, there's no reason not to delay Marathon, more so now than when I originally wrote this video, as past me we'll talk about in 10 to 15 minutes. But in summation, I think it would be grossly irresponsible for Bungie, not just as a company with a duty to its player base, but to their own staff, to not look at the feedback provided by the alpha and the general sentiment around the game and not delay the project. It'd be grossly irresponsible. But whatever, back to past me. For as much as people want to scream and cry and piss and shit and come and say, Marathon's not for you, clearly Bungie would be elated if there was a significant amount of crossover. Because why wouldn't they? Why would they want to leave money on the table? Logistically speaking, it's an unenviable position. If I could have my way, Marathon would spend longer in development and hopefully find its identity. Because if all Marathon has to offer is Bungie gameplay and a snazzy art style, it's going to get lost in the noise. Because None of that stuff matters. That stuff doesn't matter to people who play extraction shooters. That stuff doesn't matter to people who play PvP games. Bungie is fighting an uphill battle, not just with every other PvP game out there, but with themselves. They're fighting an uphill battle with the fact that they're not first to the market, that this is nowhere near as feature-rich as other extraction shooters, that they haven't developed a competitive shooter since 2007 with Halo 3, and the fact that people are pretty cognizant of their development of Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, both games being minimally viable products, both games being very rough at launch, and it's not like Destiny 2's development has gotten more smooth. The game has, historically, spent more time bad than good. Future Joker here, and the Marathon Alpha is available. Now, of course, I haven't gotten to play it because I didn't get a key. That, I don't believe, has anything to do with me being me and everything to do with the fact that it was RNG, and, well, if it wasn't for bad RNG, I would have no RNG. That's alright. I have cosmic exploration to do in Final Fantasy XIV, and, this little game that you may have heard about dropped. It was called, I envy all the people who never played Oblivion back in the day, or were just too young or weren't born yet, and they're getting to play Oblivion now for the first time with updated graphics, and you basically got a new Elder Scrolls game out of nowhere. Though I do think it's been long enough since the last time I played Oblivion that I probably won't remember everything, though I'm still going to play full stealth, thief, assassin, vampire. Oh, it's gonna be so fun. And then there's what's shaping up to be probably my game of the year coming out, Claire Obscura Expedition 33. One, I just love turn-based RPGs. They're amazing. Two, this game just looks weird and awesome in all the right ways. Apparently has a really great story. People who've played it already said, like, no, this game is going to make you cry. If you don't feel something playing this game, then, like, you're a rock or whatever. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be really, really cool. Oh yeah, unless I forget, this game is spanking the AAA industry. One, it just has this amazing production value from everything that I've seen. Two, it's a $50 game. 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, $50. Amazing. Wonderful. That's actually a compliment I should give to Oblivion as well, because isn't the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild HD upgrade for your Switch 2 going to be like $70, $80? What the fuck? Now that might all seem like a digression, but it's not. The point is, ultimately, I don't really feel like I'm missing out not playing Marathon. And there are games that come out and you do feel like, man, I gotta play this or I am missing out. Well, while I haven't gotten to play the alpha, I have been watching people play it, and I've been watching them comment about it, and I have scoured Twitter posts, seeing what people had to say about it, and I think it's pretty obvious that this game isn't going to set the world on fire. It's not even going to start a flame in your heart. So if you spend time looking at what people are saying, there's legitimate praise for Marathon. I want to be clear about that. People are enjoying the game, but the criticism is by far larger and louder than what's being praised, even from people who are praising the game. Now, the criticism falls into many of the buckets that I've already outlined in this video, or I believe I've outlined. I've not edited everything down, and I removed what was originally the ending because of the alpha, so we'll see what happens. But regardless, the criticism boils down to Marathon feeling slow, clunky, having massive amounts of aim assist on mouse and keyboard. Editing Joker here, Bungie has announced that during the closed alpha next week, quoting here, along with several updates, they will be disabling mouse magnetism. This, of course, led to a mixed reaction in the comments of that Twitter thread, namely MNK versus controller. A tale as old as time. It'll be interesting to see what solution, if any, Bungie comes up with. I don't believe they've ever come up with one for Destiny 2. So, you know, just keep that in mind. And with that, back to Past Joker. Take this tweet from Kelsky YouTube. Marathon experience. Load in. Need 12 microchips to upgrade Vault. Run around killing AI. No players. No microchips. Extract other loot. Vault is full. Forced to sell loot. Level up faction. Reward more loot. Vault still full. Sell more loot. Repeat 5 times. 1 hour of zero progress, running around, doing nothing. MintBlitz, who is a Halo content creator, replied to this tweet saying, I found myself running around for 10 to 15 minutes and could barely find enemies at times. Got bored fighting AI, sadly. To which Kelsky replied, yup, I literally had 5 matches in a row where I fought 1 or 2 batches of AI, did one simple objective, and then ran around for 15 minutes trying to find something to do or shoot. Now that, in my opinion, is kinda scathing, because that's all this game has. It's not like there's this this third bucket where it's like there's a story that I'm playing through, or all this loot can go towards me customizing a character because you don't play custom characters, or you can sell this loot for things on a player-based marketplace, or you can trade this loot for things to friends, or any of that stuff. You don't have a reason really other than propagating the same very shallow gameplay loop of fight AI, maybe fight other players, extract over and over and over and over and over and over again. But I mean, you know, that's just what people who are negative of the game are saying. What about people who are positive about the game?
You know, on the internet, a lot of like what the creator footage that has been shown is a lot of just like PvP, high octane clips and stuff. And that's kind of due to the restrictions that Bungie allowed us to, or like put on us when they allowed us to show footage. And I don't think that's necessarily representative of like a game of Marathon or a run of Marathon as a whole.
So the cool PvP high octane stuff that we've been seeing in everybody's gameplay is not actually indicative of how the game's played. And the walk around for long periods of time, not interacting with things and collecting junk maybe, is how it's played? Okay, how about Paul Tassi? He generally goes to bat for Bungie. Let's see what he has to say. Playing it now. Arc Raider seems to come down to, do you want a normal extraction shooter that looks, sounds, and plays better than existing ones? Here. Meanwhile, Marathon is... I'm not even sure. Coming away from this alpha, it just doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. Hey, that's what I've been saying. This episode of the Joker's Always Right podcast has been sponsored by Facts, Logic, and Nuance. Ask your doctor about nuance today. Okay, how about this quote from Mr. Fruit, who's generally considered a unproblematic, very nice, well-tempered guy.
I don't love it. I didn't hate it. I just thought it was fine. But I was expecting more than fine from Bungie. I was expecting, or rather hoping, for a banger. From the initial reveal, I admit I was thoroughly whelmed. It didn't seem to surpass any of my expectations, and I know I'd have to reserve judgment for when I could actually get my hands on it. So for my takeaway to be meh is disappointing for myself, because I'm always looking for that next game to really consume me. Something I can always gravitate towards, since I so often play games just to quickly discard them.
Yeah, this has not been the most shining of endorsements from people who, generally speaking, give Bungie shining endorsements. Well, you know, Dr. Lupo says it's good, and he's been consulting on the game for 6 years. It's not like he would spend 12 hours lying about something he was personally invested in that was ultimately insignificant to save face and protect his own ego. Right? I screwed up big time. The internet has been right basically since the beginning, and it has taken multiple waves of self-reflection and internal fighting to get to the point where I can fully admit fault without holding back. I lied to the internet repeatedly. I cheated and betrayed the trust of countless people that believed in me. Viewers, family, friends, everyone, myself. I carry a lot of baggage, and you all got exposed to it in the worst way. I lied directly to whomever that ad is, and I lied directly to whomever that ad is, and I used him as a prop on stream. He didn't deserve that. None of you did. I messaged him directly to apologize, and I'll gladly do it on stream too. Awkward. Pro tip, always just admit that you know enough to know that you don't know anything, and you will be a happier person. But let's go ahead and frame this entire Marathon conversation a different way. We're trying to find a reason that you would play Marathon over any other game out there. So what exactly is the point of Marathon? Because this really does sound like a game that you play for like a couple of hours once. You go, okay, yep, got my mouth full of that. Cool, I'm done. Maybe you come back 6 months later when they have new maps. And oh, hey, I'm not saying that. That's something Shroud said.
Thoughts so far? Pretty good. It's not like the best game in the world by no means. It's not the best extraction in the world by no means, but it is pretty solid. It's like a game that you'll probably check up on every now and then. You might play season 1. And then, like, I don't know, skip a few seasons and be like, oh yeah, let's grind this again in season 7 or something. I don't know. It's gonna be like one of those where you, like, you come and go, you know?
Well, that's not the type of game Bungie needs. You know? The type of game Bungie needs is the type of game that keeps people invested. Not, oh yeah, I played that. Maybe I'll come back in a couple of years and play it again. No. Destiny suffered for this. But Joker, I hear you cry out in your shrill, tremulous voice. This game isn't for you. Ah, yes. That has got to be the dumbest fucking thing anybody has ever said about a video game. If you think Bungie and Sony want Marathon to make small, indie, avant-garde, PvP only money, you've lost the fucking plot. They want it to make as many dollary dues as it can dollary diddle.
Phrasing!
Composure. Anyways, they wanted to make all of the money. And if you don't think they do, you've lost the fucking plot. So prancing around on Twitter, screeching, don't like, don't buy, or it's not for you, and patting yourself on the back like the good little Bungie bitch boy you are, will ensure that the game has a little more than a handful of sweatlords that don't stick around past the first week or two. Because the game, in and of itself, according to everybody that's played it, when you compare it to other extraction shooters, it's slow, it's dumbed down, it's too casual. So it's not even for them. It's not for the people who play these sorts of games. All they're offering these hardcore communities is a more casual game that's not as feature rich, with no real identity, all while charging a premium price for a PvP game in a market where PvP games are generally considered free to play. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with that or not, that is the standard. Now, in my opinion, Bungie is doing exactly what every other game that has ever tried to challenge Destiny's hegemony has done. Release a mediocre and unfinished product that they know is mediocre and unfinished, and realistically, corporate greed, ambition, and hubris is the best case scenario, because that at least can be reasoned with. That could be made to see logic at the point of a sword called profit. But if they're looking at this game in its current state, this mediocre and unfinished product that they plan to sell for a premium price, and they're already believing their own bullshit, they're in for a rude awakening, and we can kind of already see it. Earlier, I played a clip of Shroud talking about how this is one of those games that you play for a little bit and then you come back 2 years down the line, maybe. Well, we have the alpha numbers, and what they tell us, what they suggest, doesn't look great. For those of you who do not know, because every video is somebody's first, the alpha was invite only. Now, we're not really concerned with the actual number. What we are concerned with is the fact that after the first day, interest in the alpha dropped in half and then kept dropping. Now, I've seen some people attribute that fall off to other titles coming out, such as the Oblivion remake or Expedition 33, which is likely fair, though I don't know if I would consider Expedition 33 bigger than Bungie's exclusive Marathon Alpha. But regardless, even if that is the case, if I was Bungie, these numbers would worry me, at least somewhat. Think about it. Your exclusive invite-only alpha, which was somewhat of a pain in the ass to sign up for and redeem, wasn't engaging enough to keep people's attention for a week or two. People who would arguably be the most hardcore supporters of this game, and you couldn't keep their attention from a 20-year-old remaster or a turn-based RPG. Games that, mind you, are in categorically different genres and games that will still be there in a week or two when the alpha's over. You would think that people would want to play the alpha as much as they possibly could, and yet it dropped off by nearly half after the first day. Not the first week, not the first month, the first day. Editing Joker back again once again, and we actually have some further context to this point. What you're seeing on the screen right now are the player numbers for Arc Raiders and their alpha. Now, to be absolutely positively clear, just so everybody's on the same page, we don't care about the actual number. That means nothing. What we care about is the trend. Now, for those of you who do not know, because every video is somebody's first, Arc Raiders is an extraction shooter coming out of Stockholm, Sweden. That's actually kind of funny to me, you know, given the term Stockholm Syndrome when it comes to video games. They're also not, and I don't want this to sound insulting to them, a historically relevant studio, the way Bungie has been historically relevant to gaming. And they're also not backed by one of the largest multimedia conglomerates on the face of the planet. Personally speaking, and I know this is anecdotal, I didn't even know about this game until the alpha was over. And the point in all of this is, they continued to have player interest in their alpha as time went on, where Marathon did not. And it's not like Bungie didn't try, because they kept sending out rounds and rounds and rounds of codes basically every day. People just weren't showing up. And you can't really say all these other games were distracting people when this no-named extraction shooter comes out of left field and puts the lie to this idea that people just weren't playing Marathon because they were busy playing other things. It's just clearly not true. Maybe, just maybe, and I know that this is a ludicrous idea, but we face the reality that the Marathon Alpha wasn't that great. I know! Gas, shock, horror, lightning crackle, revelation!
And the truth shall set you free!
Now, I'm not saying any of this to be a negative Nancy. My cope is that, well, this is a 4,000 IQ play by Bungie. They know that this game is mediocre and unfinished, and they're putting this alpha out there because they need data to justify a delay, which is something I have to imagine Sony wouldn't be particularly okay with. You know, unless the data-driven general consensus was, if we release this now, we're going to lose a lot of money. That's my hope, that's my cope. The more realistic possibility is that Bungie management doesn't give two shits and a fuck, and they want to get in before they get out, so they can get those royalties basically in perpetuity and leave the disastrous flaming pile that is Marathon to be somebody else's problem. Personally speaking, like I said earlier, I don't want to see Marathon fail because the shit rolls downhill. If Marathon fails, that's bad for Destiny. If Marathon succeeds, well, that's still probably pretty bad for Destiny, but at least that's a bridge we can cross when we get to it, because at least the bridge will be there to cross. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Remember to like, but only if you did. Subscribe for more. Feel free to donate to my Patreon if you're feeling particularly generous, but above all else, stay frosty.